Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about something a little bit different than what we usually do. We're going to be talking about why Diablo 4 is not a dead game and why the game is not going to die, even though everything you see online and on YouTube says otherwise. Now let's break down why Diablo 4 receives so much hate right now. And it's pretty simple. The game does have serious problems that do need to be addressed. I'm no way saying that Diablo 4 is in a good state right now, and overall it needs to be addressed a lot, and there is valid response for criticisms as of right now. But it's more than just that if you go on YouTube. Right now, the sad truth is that hate gets views. So when you hate on a game and have all these negative criticisms, it gets more views than if you were positive most of the time. Now that's all not always true, but most of the time negativity really gets views here on YouTube. And this is really a strong driving factor in the community as well. Content creators need to live and do that need to get views. And so when a game is on a down cycle, how Diablo 4 is right now, they make negative content because it just pumps up the views and they get crazy amounts of money. But that's still not entirely the full story. Diablo does need change. It does drastically. And I do have a problem with most of the videos here on YouTube talking about how to implement that change. Now, my problem with the videos that are made about Diablo is that most of them just complain about the systems in the game, and they don't offer a way to take the broken systems and get to a better place. They don't even offer any, constructive feedback or anything. They're just complaining and nagging to get views. And I don't think that's the correct way to go about improving a game. I love Diablo 4. I played Diablo 2 forever, and I still played Diablo 2 Resurrected today. And I want to see Diablo 4 succeed. And so what I think should be happening in these videos is if you're going to make, criticisms about a game, and you're going to do it publicly on a YouTube video, I think you should at least have to have some way to take the criticisms and get it to a place where it'd be in a good spot, how to fix the problems that you have with it. Now, I try and do this in my criticisms and all the reviews that I've done for Diablo 4 is I always try to have a way to implement change that would fix those problems. Because I do truly think that's the best way to fix the game, because we can complain all we want about a system and just let the developers figure out what we want. But who knows what they're going to do? They may actually break it more or do make a change that we don't like at all. So as the community, we need to say, hey, we don't like this. We'd like it if it would be like this. You can't have X without Y. We need to tell them what we want in the game. Now, with that out of the way, why is Diablo 4 not going to die? Well, in the honesty, look at the other MMOs and other ARPGs in the space. What MMO or ARPG has ever had an extremely successful launch? I'll give you a second, but there really isn't any. Take a look at the most popular MMO that there is right now that is gaining players like an absolute frenzy, and I've spent many hours in myself, and this is a great game. Let's take a look at its launch, and that game would be Final Fantasy XIV Online. Now, I'm sure many of you have heard of it, and many of you have played it, but what you may not know is that in the original game, when it launched, it was so bad the game was shut down. And not just shut down, the game was completely wiped. The game you play today for Final Fantasy is not the game that launched at release. It was that bad. Now, if you want to see proof of this, there's tons of YouTube videos going over how bad Final Fantasy XIV was, and that's why I don't think Diablo 4 is going to die. Because if a game can come back from these servers completely shutting down, and then this server's getting wiped, to being the most popular and best MMO that we have today, I think Diablo 4 is doing pretty good. And if I think we give the developers a little bit of time for Diablo 4, they can turn it into an extremely enjoyable ARPG for us to enjoy. Diablo 4 being a seasonal game means that this game is always going to have basically kind of a circular pattern going on. At the start of the season, there's new content, people are going to be excited, they're going to be making positive reviews and positive videos about the game. About halfway through, a couple weeks into the season, stuff's starting to get stale. Maybe you get, a few negative reviews on YouTube. People are talking about what they need to be changed, what they don't like for next season. And then in the point we are now in season 1, towards the end of season 1, it is mainly going to be negative. Most of the player base has taken a break because that is what seasonal content's for. In a seasonal game like Diablo, the player base, majority of them, play at the start. And then, as our time goes, it goes slowly down and then kind of like a sine graph. Now, Diablo 4 does have a lot of problems to overcome to be in a good spot. Right now, we're in a rough spot in Diablo 4's lifespan. I don't think it's in a rough enough spot for it to completely end. And let's talk about it a little bit. There are a lot of problems with Diablo 4. The foremost being the lack of total content that we have in the actual game. If we think about that, content added every season, this eventually, hopefully, as most games do, will sort itself out. Look at Path of Exile, for example. That is a game that Diablo 4 is commonly reviewed against all the time. The comparisons you can see in almost every video. So let's take a look at Path of Exile. Path of Exile is, again, almost a 10-year-old game, and in the launch, it wasn't a very pretty launch. But over the past years and years and years, they have added content to where it is a super complex game where, honestly, it would be very, very hard to run out of content. It would take season after season of you doing different things to truly experience everything in the game. I think Diablo 4 is kind of on the same path that Path of Exile is. I think it's going to take a few seasons for it to really find its groove and figure out what the player base wants. And I think once we figure that out and once the game gets into that groove, all of us are going to be a lot happier. You know, once we start building up that vault of content from each season being carried forward, the lack of content in the endgame hopefully will be phased out. Now, that's not to say the game should have launched like this. In my opinion, the game launched really rough. I was not happy in the state that the game launched. It did not have enough content, it was rushed, it had a ton of bugs, and overall, it wasn't a very good launch. I do think this could have been avoided, but I understand why it wasn't. Now, I do want to talk about that real quick because I don't think that the developers necessarily wanted to release the game in the state that it was in at launch. And I don't think, honestly, that it was their call. The people working on the game, I bet if you asked them, would say they wanted to keep working on it for at least a couple months to finish up their final touches. But Blizzard is a company, and a company has to make money for its investors and everyone involved. And you know, you can't pour millions and millions and millions of dollars into a game forever. Eventually, it has to start producing money for the company, or else it's going to get put on the chopping block and we would never have seen it in the first place. Now, I don't have any proof of this and no written statements by developers, but if I had to guess, I would say Diablo 4 reached the end of its rope when it came in terms of launch. I bet if you asked developers, they would have loved a little bit of extra time to polish the in-game functions of the game. I just don't think it was possible. I think Blizzard needed that game to launch to start building income revenue for the company to pay its workers. Now, I am hopeful about the future of Diablo 4, and I hope you guys are too. I just want everyone to keep in mind when you're scrolling YouTube and looking for more Diablo 4 content, right now we are in the rough period when it comes to content. Most everything you see is going to be negative, and I'm hoping with the upcoming Campfire Chat that is supposed to be 4 hours long, we're going to see that they've been putting a ton of work into Season 2. Now, we won't know for sure until that Campfire Chat actually arises, but I am still having my hopes up for that. I think that if Diablo 4 can solve a few pretty simple problems, it can be a very successful game. I think with just a few changes, some additional content, most of the player base will be happy with the state that it's in. And in 3 or 4 seasons from now, I think Diablo 4 could be a thriving game with a very large player base. I mean, look at Diablo 3. That game has been out for 11 years. And when seasons start on Diablo 3, people are still there racing to this day. You want to go back even farther? Look at Diablo 2, over 20 years old, and it's still going. Now, it's going now in its resurrected form and, with a modern update and stuff like that, but people still play it. The race for D2R is still a very big thing with the seasons, and that's why overall Diablo 4 is not going to die. Even if the developers basically gave up on the game, put minimal effort into it, Diablo 4 is still going to have a player base because Diablo itself has a player base. People love Diablo. They love the story, they love the feeling, and they're going to play Diablo 4 because Blizzard did a very smart thing. None of the Diablo games have overlapping seasons. And now I should clarify that overlapping season starts. So how it works is you could play Diablo 4 season start, play it, enjoy it for several weeks, up to even a month, and then you'll have the start of maybe Diablo 3 or Diablo 2, depending on the current rotation. Then you could play the start of Diablo 2R or Diablo 3 for a while, and then a few weeks after that, maybe a month, you can play the other one. So you have 3 games to go in between content. So if you truly are a Diablo fan, you're not really going to get bored because you have so much content to do in the 3 games that are available. That's why Diablo 4 is not going to die. And I'm hoping that developers are really trying hard to put more content in the game for the people that maybe don't want to play the other Diablo games. Because if you don't play the other Diablo games, it can be very, very hard to keep yourself entertained for the entire length of the season. Now, one thing I think Diablo 4 could benefit from is potentially shorter seasons, but then that causes problems with developers not having enough time to build content for the next season. So it's kind of a balancing act between getting the right length of season to be able to build enough content for the next, but also keeping it short enough so that you don't run out of stuff to do. Now, that is my thoughts on Diablo 4 and why Diablo 4 is not going to die. I would love to hear your thoughts down in the comments down below. Let me know what you guys are thinking about Diablo 4 and if you're excited for Season 2. I know I am. So with that, I hope to see you guys in a future video. Have a good one and peace out.